I never thought anyone would want me again. After the pack cast me out, after my mate rejected me, I had learned to hide in shadows, to make myself small, to be nothing. The world saw me as weak, as broken, as a mistake. My name was whispered in pity or scorn, never in hope. The nights were the worst, cold and endless. The moon hanging heavy and cruel above the forest where I once belonged. My wolf, quiet for years, trembled deep inside me, restless and lonely, but I did not dare awaken her. I had learned that survival meant silence, meant hiding every spark of life that might attract attention. The auction house smelled of fear and desire. Stone walls soaked in centuries of deals and betrayals, candlelight flickering against the dark wood, casting shadows that seemed alive. Alphas from every corner of the territory crowded the grand hall, their eyes sharp, calculating, measuring worth in ways that made my chest ache. I stood on the raised platform, my bare feet pressed against the cold floor, my wrists bound in chains, my heart hammering louder than any drum. My hair fell in loose strands across my face, my dress plain and faded, nothing special, nothing they could see as valuable. They looked at me with disappointment, some with amusement, others with barely concealed contempt. Whispers traveled like wind through the hall, passing from one alpha to another. This Omega is weak. She is broken. She is nothing. I swallowed hard and lifted my chin, forcing myself to appear smaller, less threatening, invisible. I had convinced myself that invisibility was safety, but safety had abandoned me long ago. The auctioneer began calling the bids, voice booming and rhythmic. Most of the Omegas were bought quickly, the lucky or the skilled chosen before the crowd grew bored. But not me. No one moved. No one reached out. They glanced at my chains, at the dull light in my eyes, and shook their heads. I felt the weight of every gaze, felt it push me into the stone beneath my feet. My wolf whimpered inside me, warning, restless, confused. She had felt something, but I could not. I only felt despair. Then a new presence entered the hall and the air shifted. It was sudden, undeniable, the way a storm changes the sky in an instant. I felt it before I saw him, a power like molten steel and ice, radiating across the crowd. The chatter fell silent, the bidding halted, the candles flickered as if the flames themselves held their breath. He stepped forward from the shadows, tall and commanding, dark hair brushing his shoulders, eyes that glimmered silver in the dim light. The Alpha King, the ruler of all packs, feared and respected in every territory. And he was looking at me. He did not speak at first. He did not smile. He did not move as if he wanted to buy me, as if he wanted me to belong to him. He simply watched, and I felt it as though he could see the very marrow of my bones. My heart skipped and my wolf stirred, trembling with an excitement I had not felt in years. I wanted to look away, to hide, to tell myself that this was another danger I could not survive. But my body refused to obey. Finally, his voice cut through the silence, low and certain. "I will take her." The room froze. The words were simple, but the weight behind them made the walls tremble. All eyes turned toward him, all whispers stopping in fear or shock. No Alpha had ever dared claim an Omega in such a way, not without a fight, not without challenge. Yet here he was, standing alone, and no one moved to contradict him. Chains were undone, and my knees wobbled as his men approached. He did not touch me, did not speak to me again, yet the air around us crackled with something I could not name. A promise, a warning, a pull that made my pulse race faster than I thought possible. My wolf growled low, aware of his presence in a way that terrified and thrilled me. Something dangerous lingered there, hidden beneath his calm, and I wanted to run and stay. All at the same time. They led me from the auction hall. Out into the cold night, the moon glaring overhead like a silent witness. Shadows danced across the snow and stone of the city, twisting as if alive, and I realized that my life would never be the same. I had been nothing, unwanted, abandoned, and yet now, by some strange twist of fate, I had been chosen, and that choice brought both hope and fear. He was the Alpha King, untouchable, unchallengeable, and I was the Omega, rejected by every pack I had known. Why me? My wolf whined at the question, circling inside me. I did not know, but I felt the answer lurking in the distance. A destiny I could not yet see, but could not escape as we disappeared into the night. The fortress in the distance looming against the pale moon. I realized that whatever awaited me behind its walls would change everything. And somewhere deep inside me, beneath fear and doubt, my wolf stirred awake, sensing that this was not only a matter of survival, but of something far greater. A bond that would not be broken, a love that could not be denied, and a power I had never known waiting to claim me. The Alpha King had bought me, but I was beginning to understand that perhaps, in some way, he had always known I was his. The fortress rose against the night sky, like a dark sentinel, its towers sharp against the moonlight. I had never seen a place so alive with history and power, the stones humming as if they remembered every battle, every secret, every broken heart that had ever passed through its gates. I tried to steady my breathing as they led me through the heavy doors, the scent of ancient wood and iron mingling with something sharper, wilder, something that made my wolf stir with recognition. He did not speak as we walked. His presence alone was enough to make the air thick, charged with a current I could feel in my bones. Every step I took seemed measured against his invisible watch, as if he were counting my heartbeat, my thoughts, my very soul. My wolf trembled, half fear and half exhilaration, whispering that this was more than any Omega had faced before. I wanted to ask questions, to understand why he had chosen me, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the weight of his gaze. When we reached the great hall, the shadows seemed to stretch and curl like living things, hiding secrets in every corner. The torches flickered, revealing tapestries that told stories of battles between creatures of the night and the mortals who had feared them. Every story whispered of strength, danger, and forbidden's power. I could feel it all pressing against me, a reminder that I was stepping into a world I had never belonged to, a world I might not survive. Then he finally spoke. His voice was low, smooth, and carried a weight I could not resist. You are far more than what they have told you. I can feel it. He stepped closer, and the shadows seemed to bend toward him, as if the castle itself recognized him as master. My wolf growled softly, unsettled and excited all at once, sensing the energy that flowed through him and brushing against me in waves I could not explain. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I had been rejected, dismissed, and branded weak for years, and yet here was a creature whose power dwarfed everything I had known, telling me that I mattered. I did not know whether to feel hope or terror. You carry a bond that cannot be ignored, he said, his silver eyes glinting in the torchlight. It is not just your strength or your survival instinct. It is something older, something deeper. It calls to me in ways I cannot name. I tried to step back, to put distance between us, but my body refused. The pull was undeniable, like gravity I had no control over. My wolf pressed against the edge of my mind, alert, curious, warning me that this was a bond unlike anything I had felt before. You are my mate, he said suddenly, the words ringing with certainty. Not by choice of pack or law, but by the fate that has been waiting for both of us for centuries. I swallowed hard. Mates were sacred in our world, binding for life. a connection that could elevate or destroy everything in its path. But I was a rejected Omega, a discarded soul. How could I be destined for an Alpha King? Before I could answer, the wind shifted, carrying with it a faint whisper, almost like voices of wolves calling through the halls. The castle seemed to pulse, as if it were alive and aware of the bond between us. My heart raced, my senses sharpened, and the small, broken part of me that had been hiding for so long began to stir. Lucian studied me, and I realized he was not just looking at me. He was searching, probing, seeing through the walls I had built around my heart. The air between us thickened with tension, a mixture of warning and promise. Danger lingered here, both inside the fortress and in the world outside. There were those who would see me as nothing and him as untouchable, and they would not hesitate to tear us apart. He turned toward the balcony, motioning for me to follow. From there, I could see the forest beyond, shadowed and alive. The trees whispering secrets under the moonlight. "The night remembers you," he said softly, "and the forest remembers me. Together, we awaken what has been waiting." A shiver ran through me, equal parts fear and anticipation. My wolf growled, sensing the magnitude of the truth hidden in his words. I felt something shift deep within, a spark igniting a fire I thought had died long ago. He was dangerous, yes, but he was also the key to something I had never dared imagine. Something powerful, unstoppable, and meant for me alone. I wanted to run, to hide, to retreat into the safety of being nothing. And yet, something stronger held me there, rooted to the balcony, breathing in the same night air as the Alpha King. The pull of destiny, the unspoken promise of a bond, wrapped around me and refused to let go. I could feel it threading through my veins, awakening strength and courage I had never known. "Tomorrow," he said, voice low and certain, "you will begin to understand who you truly are." I nodded, though uncertainty clawed at me. My wolf was alert, sensing danger and destiny intertwined. I had been unwanted, discarded and left to the shadows. But now, standing beside the Alpha King, I could feel the first threads of something greater pulling me forward. I did not know what awaited me in the days to come. But I knew this. Nothing would ever be the same. The bond had begun, and the world of shadows power. And Forbidden's connection had opened its gates for me. I had no choice but to step through. The morning came with a silver frost coating the stone walls of the fortress. I woke before dawn, drawn to the balcony where the wind carried a faint scent of the forest and something older, more dangerous. Lucian was already there, standing like a sentinel, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I hesitated, unsure if I belonged in this world of power and shadows, yet something stronger than fear kept me moving toward him. "Good morning," I said quietly. My voice sounded small against the vastness of the fortress and the weight of his presence. He turned slowly, his silver eyes catching the first rays of light, and for a moment I saw something raw in him: strength, authority, and a vulnerability he rarely showed. "The forest spoke of you last night," he said. "Even the shadows notice when you are near. They do not forget." I frowned. "The shadows? They remember more than we do," he said. "Your wolf is awakening, and with it, memories long buried. Memories that are dangerous if ignored." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the frost. "Dangerous memories?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my effort to stay calm. "Yes," he said, stepping closer, his presence undeniable. "About why you were rejected, about what the council did, and why your place was taken from you." The words struck me like a blow. I had always believed my exile was punishment for weakness, a result of my own failings. But now the fortress air seemed to hum with secrets, and I realized there was a story I had never been told. My wolf pressed against my ribs, restless and demanding answers, and I felt a surge of fear and curiosity so strong it made my pulse quicken. "You were chosen for a reason," he continued. "Not because you are weak, but because you are stronger than anyone suspects." They feared what you could become. They feared you might challenge everything they control. I stared at him, my mind racing. Every betrayal, every whispered insult, every dismissal I had endured now carried a new weight. Someone had decided I was worthless. Someone had used my supposed weakness to keep me hidden, to keep me powerless. The truth was not just painful, it was dangerous. Before I could respond, a messenger arrived, a young beta with urgency in his step. "Alpha King, the northern border is under attack," he said. "There are rogue packs moving, and one has been spotted near the villages." Lucien's expression hardened, and the calm mask he always wore fell away for a moment. "Stay inside," he said to me, voice low but firm. "Do not leave these walls. Nothing is safe outside, and your wolf must be controlled until you understand it." I wanted to protest, to argue that I could help, that I could fight, but the look in his eyes stopped me. He was not only an Alpha King, but a protector, a force that could consume or defend. I realized I was standing at the edge of something larger than my fears, and the choice before me was no longer simple survival. As the day passed, Lucien began to teach me, showing me the depth of my bond, the way our energies intertwined, and how the awakening of my wolf could change everything. Every word, every glance made the tension between us impossible to ignore. I felt pulled toward him, a connection that was both thrilling and frightening. I could not deny the strange comfort in his presence, nor the sharp awareness of danger that lingered beneath it. Yet even as I learned, shadows of betrayal crept through the fortress. Servants whispered, eyes avoided mine, and I sensed forces gathering against us. People who would see our bond as a threat, who would stop at nothing to tear us apart. My wolf growled low in warning. The danger was no longer just outside the walls, it was inside, threaded through every glance and every secret smile that concealed hidden motives. That night, as the moon rose high, I walked the halls alone, the weight of the revelation pressing on me. I understood now that my exile had not been about weakness. It had been about fear. Fear of what I could become, and fear of the power I shared with him. My heartbeat quickened as I turned a corner, nearly colliding with Lucien. "You feel it too," I said, words barely above a whisper. He nodded, expression unreadable. "The bond is stronger than either of us imagined. It will test everything, your courage, your loyalty, your trust. And soon, it will demand more than either of us is prepared to give." I swallowed hard, realizing that nothing would ever be the same. I had been unwanted, dismissed, and left in the shadows, yet now, standing in the fortress with the Alpha King, I felt the weight of destiny pressing down on me. I could not turn back. I could not hide. And I could not ignore what was coming. As he walked away, the wind carried a warning, or perhaps a promise, that echoed through the halls. I felt it deep in my bones, and my wolf stirred, aware that the days ahead would force choices that could change everything. Danger, betrayal, and a bond that could not be broken awaited us, and I knew, with a certainty that both terrified and thrilled me, that the next step would not only define my life, but the lives of everyone tied to this forbiddance. Powerful connection. I was no longer just a rejected Omega. I was part of something far greater, something dangerous, and I had no choice but to follow it. Wherever it might lead, the storm arrived without warning. Dark clouds swallowing the moon, wind slicing through the fortress like blades. I had barely closed my eyes when the alarms rang through the halls. A deep, guttural roar that made the stones tremble. Lucien was already moving before I could speak, his silver eyes sharper than ever, scanning the shadows for the threat. "Stay close," he commanded, voice low but urgent. There was no time for questions. My wolf shivered in response to his energy, sensing the danger before it reached us. I followed him through twisting corridors, each step echoing against the ancient stone, the storm outside casting strange shadows that danced like spirits along the walls. When we reached the courtyard, I saw them, rogue packs, driven by something darker than ambition, moving like shadows under the storm. They were faster, stronger than any normal threat. Fear coiled tight in my chest, but at the same time, something inside me, something deep and wild, stirred awake. Lucien did not falter. He stepped forward, commanding the space, and yet he looked back at me. "Your bond is stronger than they understand," he said, voice steady, carrying that unshakable certainty I had come to rely on. "You are part of this now. We cannot win alone." I nodded, though my pulse raced with both terror and an impossible thrill. My wolf growled low, responding to his words as if she had known this moment would come all along. Every instinct told me to flee, to hide, but the bond between us thrummed through me like fire. It would not allow me to run. The first clash was sudden. The rogue pack surged forward, and the courtyard erupted into a blur of movement, growls, and the roar of elemental energy I had never experienced before. Lucien moved like a shadow himself, swift, precise, a predator controlling the storm. And I felt it too, my own strength answering to him, to the bond that had awakened inside me. It was during the chaos, amid the flashes of lightning and the howl of wind, that the revelation came. One of the attackers bore the mark of my former pack, the symbol that had once been my shame. My chest tightened and my mind reeled. They had sent me here, not just to exile me, but to lure me into a trap. Everything I had believed about my rejection, about my weakness, was a lie. My pack had feared the power within me, feared the bond I shared with the Alpha King before it had even fully formed. I stumbled, gripping the cold stone wall for support, and Lucien's hand found mine. His touch was grounding, a tether in the storm. "Do not falter," he said. "They want to break you. They cannot. Not when you are with me." The words struck something inside me, a mix of anger, sorrow, and a deep, undeniable connection that made my chest ache. I realized then that this bond was more than protection. It was recognition, validation, a force that could not be denied. I was no longer the rejected Omega. I was part of something far greater, something no pack or council could control. The battle raged on, but my focus was split between the attackers and the truth that had been revealed. Betrayal cut deeper than any claw or fang. I had been used, abandoned, manipulated for years. And yet here I stood, alive, stronger, and standing beside the Alpha King who had claimed me when the world had rejected me. Then, in the chaos, I saw movement at the edge of the storm, a figure watching us from the shadows. It was not one of the rogue packs. There was something familiar about the presence, something older and more dangerous than anything I had encountered. My wolf growled, a sound deep and warning, and I knew instinctively that this was only the beginning. Lucien followed my gaze and stiffened. "Do you see it?" he asked, voice tense. I nodded, unable to speak, my heart hammering. His jaw tightened, and I realized that even he, the Alpha King, felt the weight of what was coming. He took my hand again, a firm, grounding grip, and for the first time I saw fear flash in his eyes. Not for himself, but for me. The Alpha King, who had faced countless threats and ruled through power, feared for the Omega he had chosen. That realization, more than any roar or clash of fangs, made the storm inside me ignite. The wind tore through the courtyard, carrying whispers of fate, warning, and danger. I understood then that nothing would ever be the same. My rejection, my exile, the lies I had been told, they were all shadows compared to the truth that had been revealed tonight. I was part of a bond that could not be broken, tied to a king whose strength and loyalty challenged everything I had known. As the first figure stepped fully from the shadows, cloaked and silent, the storm seemed to pause, holding its breath. Lucien tightened his grip on my hand, his eyes locked on the newcomer, and I felt the full weight of destiny pressing down on us both. I did not know what awaited us, or if we could survive what was coming. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This night had changed everything. The bond had awakened, the betrayal had been revealed, and the danger was only beginning. And as the figure moved closer, I realized that the next choice I made would not just define my life, but the lives of everyone tied to this forbidden, powerful connection. I was no longer an observer in my own story. I was at the center of it, and there was no turning back. The night was darker than I had ever seen, the storm having passed but leaving the world trembling and raw. Smoke rose from the edges of the fortress, and the scent of fear lingered in the air. I could feel it in my wolf, sharp and insistent, warning that the danger was not over. Lucien stood beside me, tall, unyielding, his silver eyes scanning the shadows, ready for what I could not yet see. "They are here," he said quietly, voice steady but edged with urgency. I nodded, gripping his hand, feeling the bond pulse like a living thing between us. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to abandon everything, but I could not. I had chosen this path, just as he had chosen me. From the darkness emerged the rogue packs, their numbers overwhelming, but behind them, the figure I had glimpsed before stepped forward. It was someone I had once trusted, someone I had believed was gone, and the sight of them sent a shiver through me that was equal parts grief and disbelief. My chest tightened, and my wolf howled at the presence. Sensing betrayal and hidden power, Lucien tightened his grip, his gaze never leaving the newcomer. "This ends tonight," he said, tone absolute. I nodded, fear and determination mixing into a strange, fierce clarity. I could feel the energy of the bond between us, strong and undeniable, and it gave me courage I did not know I had. The confrontation began with words, low and dangerous, the air vibrating with tension. Accusations and secrets spilled like fire over dry grass. I learned the truth then, a revelation I had never imagined. My exile, my rejection, the lies of my former pack, they had all been calculated. They feared the bond I could form with the Alpha King. They feared that together we would awaken something neither they nor the council could control. I staggered back, stunned, the betrayal cutting deeper than any threat I had faced in battle. My wolf whimpered, a soft, grieving sound, and I realized that for the first time I understood the weight of my own power and the danger of what it meant to be chosen. Lucien held me steady, his presence a constant anchor, and I felt something shift in me. Anger, sorrow, and determination flared together, making my pulse race and my senses sharpen. "You cannot control what has been born," I said, my voice stronger than I thought possible. "I am not what you wanted me to be. I am what I am meant to be." Lucien's eyes met mine, silver and unwavering, and I felt the bond between us blaze like the first dawn. We moved together, not in fear, but in unity. Our connection amplified, and the energy that flowed through us changed the battle before it even began. The rogue packs faltered, sensing the bond that could not be broken. The force that had been waiting to awaken. The figure before me faltered as well, revealing their own vulnerability. The revelation of truth had shaken them, and in that moment, I realized the power of honesty, courage, and the strength that comes from accepting who you truly are. I had been rejected, abandoned and betrayed. But standing here, facing the storm and the danger, I understood that my worth had never depended on anyone else. Lucien turned to me, voice low but full of certainty. We end this together. Whatever comes, we face it as one. I nodded, feeling the full weight of our bond. My wolf surged within me, fierce and loyal, and I knew that nothing would break us. Not fear, not betrayal, not even the shadows of the past. Together, we were unstoppable, not because we were unassailable, but because we were united, because our connection gave us courage, clarity, and strength. The rogue packs finally retreated, sensing the force of the bond and the power it wielded. The figure who had betrayed me stepped back, defeated but alive, a quiet reminder that choices and truths have consequences. The storm outside the fortress seemed to calm, the wind settling as if the world itself recognized the victory of courage and trust over fear and deception. Lucien released my hand for a moment and rested, his palm against my cheek, a gesture full of reassurance and unspoken emotion. "You were never weak," he said softly. "You were waiting for this, for the bond to awaken, for the truth to be known." Tears burned my eyes, not from pain, but from relief and understanding. I had survived the storm, faced the betrayal and danger, and discovered the strength that had been within me all along. I was no longer the rejected Omega, no longer the pawn of others' fears. I was part of something powerful, destined, and real. As we stood together on the fortress balcony, watching the first light of dawn break across the forest, I understood the magnitude of what we had endured. We had survived the night, but more importantly, we had survived ourselves, our doubts, and our pasts. Yet even as the morning light touched the towers, I sensed that the path ahead would not be easy. There were still those who would test us, challenge the bond, and try to undo what had been awakened. But for the first time, I did not fear the future. I faced it with Lucien at my side, the Alpha King who had claimed me, and with the bond that had proven stronger than anything else in the world. And I knew, deep in my bones, that the choices we made next would shape not just our lives, but the destiny of every pack that lived in the shadow of the fortress. The danger was over for now, but the story was far from finished, and the next chapter was waiting, ready to test us in ways we could not yet imagine. The first rays of dawn spilled across the fortress, soft gold light chasing away the shadows of the night. The air was still, carrying the scent of rain-soaked stone, and the faint, lingering traces of the storm. I stood beside Lucien on the highest balcony, our hands intertwined, our breaths syncing with the rhythm of a bond that had endured betrayal, danger, and uncertainty. For the first time in years, I felt the weight in my chest lift, replaced by a quiet certainty I had never known. The rogue packs had been driven back, the figure of betrayal had retreated, and the council's whispers of doubt had no power here. Our victory was not measured in blood or battle, but in truth and courage. I had faced my past, the lies and rejection that had defined me for so long, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and fully aware of the strength that had always been inside me. My wolf stirred peacefully within, no longer restless, no longer afraid. She had finally found her place, her voice, and her mate. Lucien's eyes met mine, silver and unwavering in the morning light. "You have changed everything," he said, voice soft but certain. "Not just for yourself, but for every pack that feared what they did not understand. You have proven that destiny cannot be denied." I smiled, a small, steady curve of relief and pride. "I never thought I would matter, or that my life could be anything but shadows," I admitted. "But standing here with you, I see now that I was never broken. I was waiting for this for the bond to awaken, for someone to see me as I am. He drew me closer, not in urgency, but with the weight of a promise kept and a love affirmed. The fortress, ancient and powerful, seemed to pulse around us, acknowledging what had been forged in the chaos of the night. We were no longer Omega and King, not in fear or hierarchy alone, but in partnership, in understanding, and in a bond that transcended fear, doubt, and even the shadows of the past. The castle doors opened behind us, and the pack gathered in the courtyard, their expressions cautious but respectful. They had seen what the bond could do, had witnessed the strength that had emerged from rejection and betrayal. Slowly they bowed, not in submission alone, but in recognition of a truth they could no longer deny. We were united, and our connection had changed the very foundation of the packs. I felt my chest tighten with gratitude, hope, and something warmer, something that had been simmering since the first moment Lucien had claimed me. I realized that love, true and enduring, was not only about affection or passion, but about trust, courage, and the willingness to stand together in the face of impossible odds. We had fought storms, faced betrayal, and confronted danger that would have broken anyone else. And yet, here we were, standing stronger, together, and unafraid. Lucien's hand brushed a strand of hair from my face, a simple gesture filled with meaning. "I promised I would protect you," he said quietly. "But it was never protection alone. You were meant to stand beside me, not behind me, and to awaken what we could only achieve together." I nodded, feeling the truth of it settle deep into my bones. I had been rejected, cast aside, and made to feel worthless, but the bond with Lucien had reminded me that every exile, every insult, every moment of loneliness had led me here. I had been chosen, not for what others thought I lacked, but for the strength, courage, and loyalty that had always been mine. The wind stirred, carrying whispers of the forest, of the mountains, and of every creature that watched over us. It spoke of endurance, resilience, and the quiet triumph of a bond forged in adversity. I inhaled deeply, letting the morning air fill my lungs, and for the first time in years I felt truly at peace. The night had tested me, the past had tried to define me, but I had chosen my own path. Lucien tightened his grip on my hand, his silver eyes locking with mine, and I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. We were no longer defined by fear or rejection. We were defined by choice, by bond, and by a love that had been forged in fire and tempered in trust. I looked out across the forest, the fortress, and the world that had once seemed so cruel and unyielding. I understood that life was not about being wanted by everyone, but about being seen, understood, and valued by those who truly mattered. And I had been seen. I had been chosen. As the sun rose higher, warming the stones beneath our feet, I whispered softly, more to myself than anyone else. I was the rejected Omega, but now I am more than I ever imagined. I am part of something eternal, and I am exactly where I am meant to be. Lucien smiled, a rare, gentle expression that reflected relief, pride, and unspoken affection. Together we watched the horizon, two souls bound by destiny, trust, and an unbreakable bond. The past could no longer touch us, the storms could not shake us, and the world could no longer define us. For the first time, I knew the truth. Rejection had not been the end of my story. It had been the beginning. And with the Alpha King at my side, I stepped fully into the life, the bond, and the love that had been waiting for me all along.